schools. While matriculants are back at school after a one-week break, public schools do remain closed for another 3 weeks after concerns raised, of course, over the peak of infections, which is likely to take place this month well into September. Now, Motshekga will monitor the return of grade 12 pupils at 2 schools in Lethlabile. For more on the story now, our reporter Mbali Thethani joins us on the line, and that's because she's currently on her way to Brit. So, Mbali, it is kind of expected, isn't it, that there's going to be some form of inspection of these schools. But let's kind of understand the context in which this is taking place. Matrics are back at school. This happened yesterday. Do we know roughly how that return played out yesterday?
Well, of course, we've seen the Education Minister Angie Motshekga continuing to do these inspections as the academic year resumes. We do know that pupils are currently, public schools are currently on a 4-week break, and as you've said, we know that grade 12 pupils did return to their classrooms yesterday, so they were only given that 1 week break rather. So we know that this morning the Basic Education Minister will be inspecting and monitoring at least 2 schools in Britain. This is Lethlabile Secondary School as well as Tepahalang Secondary School. And of course, we know that we've seen the Health Minister, Willem Kize, continuing to say that we are expecting a rise in infections. And we know that there's been a lot of controversy when it comes to the issues around schools. We've seen teacher unions in recent weeks, just basically complaining and saying that, well, if there is this increase expected, why is it that schools are allowed to be opened? And we subsequently then saw that message coming out from President Cyril Ramaphosa. They are basically saying that, well, schools will now be shut because they are observing the surge in the increases, and they are taking these precautionary measures to ensure that, well, teachers are safe as well as pupils are safe. We know that teachers have been saying that, well, because of this rise in infections, there's been an issue when it comes to mental health for teachers as well as even pupils. So we know that now when she goes and she inspects this, we are expecting to see, in terms of numbers, we know that public schools have quite big numbers when it comes to pupils and classes. So, we are not really surprised by this move where it's only grade 12 being allowed to head back into the classrooms right now.
You know, Mbali, at the beginning of the outbreak, when the inspections were being rolled out at the start, I remember questions emerging about how the department decides which schools it's going to inspect, right? It's almost kind of accepted that, today the minister will be in Brits watching how schools play out, but we know that the experiences of all the schools in the country are actually very different. Has there been anything said about what informs the decision about which schools are actually inspected to gauge where we are as we phase in the number of pupils throughout the pandemic?
Well, this is something that the Basic Education Minister has not really communicated that well, but as journalists, we know that they'll usually monitor schools which they see that, they put in the necessary measures in place. But at the same time, we know that there's always a number of schools where they don't have access to, these PPEs and ensuring that there's issues around social distancing is addressed. And this is something that Basic Education Minister has said that, well, we are monitoring these schools. But when you also go on the ground and you go on your own inspection and you look at some of these various schools, especially public schools, you begin to pick up a number of problems. And when you look at this decision that was taken to actually close schools for at least 4 weeks for now, it's no surprise really that, some of these decisions are informed by the fact that some schools actually don't have the proper necessary PPEs and equipment to ensure that there will be that social distancing. There will be, less pupils in a classroom. We have seen the department saying that while we have made more measures in place, we are planning on using community centers as well for schools who have extremely large numbers, and they've got a number of pupils in those schools. So these are the questions that continue to arise, and this is why they've not been able to allow all pupils to be in school at the same time.
Right, Mbali Thethani, let's leave it there for now. Thanks for getting us into the picture. That's our Mbali Thethani en route to Brits, where Basic Education Minister Angie Motshekga is going to be inspecting at least 2 schools for us this morning.